The idea is simple. Beat Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on its hardest preset difficulty, Bringer of Chaos. In this mode, enemies have 2.5 times health, hit 25% harder, and attack 50% faster, and there are some other things we'll mention as they become most relevant. Let's get into it. Our journey starts off with our protagonist Rex doing some salvaging work while riding his Gramps, who we are quickly shown to be an elderly titan with a bit of an attitude.
Yet somehow you can gauge the profits in an instant.
Rex opens up the safe he salvaged, expecting quite the profit, but what he finds instead is a fight disguised as a tutorial.
I didn't expect that!
He does a weird backflip thing, throws away his crowbar, which I'm very upset he doesn't use to fight, and then our first battle begins once he grabs his junk sword. The way combat works in this game is quite simple, at least for now. First, you have to stop moving. This allows you to auto-attack. Auto-attacks happen in sets of 3, with the second auto-attack being slightly stronger than the first, and the third being slightly stronger than the second. Aside from just auto-attacks though, you also have access to arts. Arts are generally stronger attacks or buffs that generally also have some sort of special effect to go with them. Each art comes with the recharge gauge on it, and the recharge gauge is filled by performing auto-attacks. You can also cancel an auto-attack into an art by pressing the art button right as an auto-attack cycle finishes, making combat go significantly faster. Right now, Rex only has access to Anchor Shot, which does a little bit of damage, and spawns an HP potion on hit. HP potions heal a small amount of health, unless it's a bigger HP potion, which are usually gained through means we do not currently have access to. This fight isn't terribly hard, but that won't last very long, I promise. We continue to the next cutscene, where Rex gives us a bit of background into the world he lives in. It's called Allrest, and there's a massive cloud sea very reminiscent of Skyward Sword, and instead everyone originated from a place called Elysium. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is a subtle reference to the Garden of Eden, but maybe I'm looking too far into something from a series known for its religious and biblical references. They got kicked out, but were given some form of mercy from the architect, who may as well be God, in the form of titans, which are basically living, moving, and potentially breathing islands. Afterwards, we learn that titans do indeed have bones, and while Rex begins fate eating an arm from the crustip we just killed, we witness a colossal titan cry its final breath, before falling below the cloud sea and nearly killing Rex from the resulting cloud splash. Rex and Gramps get a bit philosophical about the origin of their ancestors, but even Old Man Gramps isn't actually old enough to know for sure. He was born from an actual mother, probably? They talk about how nice it would be if they could return to Elysium, where they'd presumably have infinite resources like land and food and water, and there would be no need for fighting, as if humans aren't naturally self-destructive or anything like that. Leave me alone, I'm American, it's true here. After this, Rex decides he has enough treasure to go sell, so he asks for Gramps to take him for a ride despite 4 p.m. being Gramps' bedtime, I guess. Rex ain't having none of the old geezer bullcrap, so they set off.
Don't play the lazy old man with me. There's plenty of sunshine left.
We arrive at the Argentum Trade Guild, where the greedy yet cute Naponkind thrives. Rex is well known around these parts, so he's immediately greeted, and then he immediately blows off his parking ticket fee because he wants to negotiate trades first, despite being told he can't do credit. The game makes a mediocre joke about Gramps not having a wallet, but I don't know if I truly believe that Rex has absolutely zero cash stored away in that little hut of his.
Figures.
Finally, we're allowed to play the game. Or so you think, because the game immediately opens up with one of its many awful tutorials. I ignore it because I have a few hours into the game, and we continue on our way. We start by immediately switching the game over to Bringer of Chaos difficulty, and the challenge immediately begins. We checked out this boat and its optional cutscene, except not really. Then we jump into the Cloud Sea. Why? To greet our good friend the Skyfish. who I have decided to name Thaumathy, or Tomathy, whichever you prefer. He's technically an enemy, but there's no way to actually get into a fight with him as far as I know, so he's our friend now. Fun fact, he's also the highest level any enemy of this type can be in any of the Xenoblade games. Afterwards, we pay off Wretch's parking ticket with the 33 gold he has in his pocket, don't know why he didn't do that immediately, get another tutorial I don't care about, and then proceed to sell our treasures, where we learn Wretch is terrible at gauging profits because he doesn't want to get involved with military supplies.
What? That's it?
It's life, Mayor. There's still more than I give to non-friend. If you bring military supplies, then you get good price.
The Nopon lady calls him a waste of space, says he's wasting his talents, but then compliments him on sending his money home at such a young age, before immediately berating her own son, who is sitting right behind her, mourning, and calling him a dum-dum. We get 200 G, and then after walking a whole 5 steps, we get interrupted by yet another tiny little furball known as Pupunian, who has 2 large muscular men following him around like mama hawks. We learn Rex comes from a place known as Fonset Village in the Letharian Archipelago, and that the chairman of Argentum wants to see us personally. The cutscene ends, we talk to Pupunian once again and ask him how he's doing. Apparently he's doing just great. Aside from that, his wife Karen left him and took the kids. I wonder who she left him for. We head off to the chairman's room, where we're immediately greeted by the single largest Nopon to ever exist, and are immediately surrounded by scantily clad women who have probably been forced to do things no creature should ever have to do. Chairman Banna has a job for us to do, and he offers 200,000 G, which is probably more money than Wretch would have ever made in his entire life prior to the events of this story. Wretch is obviously flabbergasted at this amount and proceeds to fawn over it like a stitch drill does over a $20 bill. He accepts the job, and we are greeted by an epic slow-mo shot of our employers. You got the fan-favorite Welsh cat girl, there's
Flora heals an aching soul.
You got villain vibes, and finally there's Masked Sephiroth. They're known as drivers, and Mr. Flora here is a blade, but most of that terminology is relatively unimportant for the time being. They need a small, elite team of Letharian salvagers for the job, which Ritz has half fits the job of descriptions. He proceeds to fail at showboating, gets made fun of by the Welsh cat girl, then soon after gets attacked by the big man on the left. Thankfully, he was only using 0.1% of his full power, so Rex managed to fend off the attack decently well. Throughout this whole exchange, we learn their names are Malos, Jin, and Nia, but I promise to give them an unhealthy number of nicknames as the playthrough goes on, assuming I remember. Rex says that Gramps taught him how to fight, and frankly I find it hard to believe unless Rex is already a certified dragon hunter. No more details are given on the job at this point, but we're given an advance pay of 100,000 G and return to Gramps, who yells at Rex for accepting a job we know nothing about, which is an extremely justifiable response. Rex proceeds to ignore him because he has his eyes on that big fat cash prize. At this point, the game has us send 90% of our winnings to our hometown village, and then we do a bit of grocery shopping to prepare for the journey ahead, including our first real accessory, the Abyss Vest, which will increase our HP by 24%. This accessory is actually really good and holds up for quite a while throughout the game, though at this point, 24% doesn't add up to much. After we finish grocery shopping, we take a quick nap in the inn, which allows us to raise our level to 3, and after we are allowed to buy a couple Narcipair jellies, which are basically the best pouch item in the entire game. At this point, I figure I should talk a bit about some of the equipables that we have access to at this point in the game. There's accessories, like the Abyss Vest, that generally raise our stats or have specific effects on completing specific actions, like healing a very small amount of HP when hitting an auto attack. Using the right accessories at different points in the game will be key to completing this challenge, and it'd likely be outright impossible to do the challenge without them, unless you were to significantly overlevel, which I personally consider the boring solution. We also have access to pouch items, which can have more effects than I can probably even remember, but the Narcipair Jelly specifically is very important because it automatically recharges our cooldowns by a small portion every second. This can add up to a very large amount of extra uptime on arts. And for this challenge, it'll be more than a little helpful. There are other equipables that sort of alter your stats and such, but we'll go over those when we have access to them in the next chapter. After we do our grocery shopping, we continue on to the actual job. Rex and Nia fight a little bit more before we enter the Maelstrom, which I guess is Argentum's best ship or something. We enter the ship, and Wretch is on nightly watchguard duty, so we talk to each of our clients before heading up to relieve the current watchguard. The music that plays during this cutscene is genuinely my favorite in the entire game, and while it does play a couple more times throughout the game, I figure you should have a bit of a listen. Truth be told, I don't think there's a single song in the entire Xenoblade 2 OST that I dislike, but calming songs like this will always be my favorite. I highly recommend listening to everything the OST has to offer when you get the chance. I'll point out some songs as time goes on, but I'm still new to editing, so what I am willing to do will likely be limited.
Arrived. That was poorly judged.
We relieve the watchguard, and Nia decides to talk to Wretch a bit about why he decided to become a salvager. We learn the first rule of the salvager's code, which is basically to just get as drunk as much as possible, and Nia decides she probably won't be changing careers, which is a very valid decision. Wretch tells her that he believes salvaging is the key to finding a way to Elysium. He wants to find Elysium so nobody has to fight anymore and people wouldn't have to worry about food or resources, which is a terrible idea if Wally taught me anything. Nia makes fun of him at first, but ultimately decides that Wretch is a good dude. We learn that Wretch's parents died when he was young, and that he practically was raised by Gramps himself, which isn't entirely true, but we won't learn more about that for quite a while. After this nice little chat, we make it to the job site and have to actually do our job. We dive into the Cloud Sea after Nia calls everyone a lowlife, and collectively manage to unsink a massive ancient ship. We get on board, Nia gives us a half compliment, and Jin decides that Wretch will be exploring the ship alongside himself, Malos, and Nia. Now, we could start actually exploring the ship, or we could go back to Argentum and completely break the flow of the game. I'll be frank, a level 3 Wretch would straight up be unable to finish the ancient ship on Bringer of Chaos. He is just far too weak. So, we head back to Argentum, do a few side quests that would have been a bit too difficult for Wretch to do on his own, like, say, a game of hide and seek. Being real though, we want to do all 3 quests currently available to us for the bonus experience, and at least one of them likely would have been impossible for Wretch to do on his own at this point in the game, which is why I waited until we had a full party to do them. We stay at the inn again, and Wretch is now level 6. Much better than level 3.
I can do better.
We skip travel back to the ship and fight a large Lazat thing, which is no trouble at all. Everyone is in awe of the strength of drivers, but Nia is acting cocky as usual. Malos yells at Nia and Wretch proceeds to make an incredibly unfunny joke.
Gramps always taught me to respect my elders.
And then we finally have some level of freedom to explore the ship. We do so, but nothing all that interesting actually happens, so once we get towards the end, I skip travel back to Argentum one more time, make Wretch level 7, and then it's time to do a bit of accessory and skill prep. Every playable character has a skill tree that you can slowly unlock as you collect SP gained through a variety of means. I don't know all of them. I have Wretch learn the Reflex Response skill, which is not only cheap, but increases our agility by 20, which is a massive increase for this point in the game. Next it's on to accessories, which we can equip a max of 2 at any point. I decided to equip a muscle belt, which increases our strength by 20, again a very high increase for this point in the game, in order to help our damage output. I also keep on the Abyss Vest we bought, since every bit of HP is nice to have. After I finish my preparations, I enter the main control room place, and we have our very first boss fight. Or maybe it's a mid-boss, either could work.
Not planning on letting us past, huh? Sounds like a challenge.
The Medalo-Alado fight starts with using cursed cuisine to quickly close the distance and inflict blowdown, which knocks us away and briefly makes us unable to act. I'm pretty sure there's some way to avoid it, but I'm not nearly skilled enough to, and I don't think it's entirely necessary, though it does take out a third of our health. The overgrown sludge has quite a few dangerous attacks, but thankfully Malos and Jin should always have aggro over Rex, so we aren't in danger of getting 2 or 3 shot at this point. Rex doesn't do much damage either, so we mainly rely on the other 2 to whittle it down, and Rex is mainly there to build up Anchor Shot for the HP potions, which heal everyone for a little bit, preventing a quick death. There's a bit of luck in this fight when it comes to our teammates' AI, as the fight can be made a lot easier if they manage to inflict both Bright and Topple. We'll go into more detail about what these can do later when we can consistently inflict these statuses ourselves, but for now, just know that they are very helpful. Once the Alado is getting close to half health, I move Rex a fair distance away from the fight because the Alado has an attack called Fin of Fear that can do a lot of damage, especially if it's the first move that happens after the Alado hits 50% health remaining. Thankfully, the Alado's health isn't going down fast enough for this to be a huge deal, but avoiding it is still a good idea on Rex since we only have so much health to work with. I don't move back in yet though, as once we deplete half its HP, it enters a rage state. This state generally makes enemies fight harder and sometimes faster, and exclusive to Bringer of Chaos, gives them a Rage Strike attack that does absurd amounts of damage and depletes the party gauge depending on the damage done. The party gauge at this point basically just dictates if we can revive party members once they get incapacitated, but we charge it so slowly it may as well not exist. Thanks, Bringer of Chaos, very cool. As I said earlier, Fin of Fear is very dangerous, especially if it ends up being the Rage Strike attack, but thankfully we managed to avoid that worst case scenario, so instead I used Cursed Cuisine, only dealing about 350 damage to Malos. Although, this is still a problem, because now Malos, who is essentially the party tank, is below 500 HP, which means he's nearly dead. Rex's tiny little potions aren't nearly enough in terms of healing at this point, but we should be able to get through this fight with a little bit of luck. Now, if I were smart, I would have had Rex rejoin the fight so we can provide that smallest bit of healing. But because I'm a moron, I decide to dance around in circles instead as Malos slowly but surely dies of cringe. And another Fin of Fear. I still think Jin should be able to handle it, but I quickly realize that there's a very real possibility I screwed up, because our offense has effectively been cut in half against an enraged boss. Jin is relatively evasive though, so with a bit of luck and maybe some support from my Rex, it could still be possible. Unfortunately, luck is rarely ever on my side, so with the Alado down to less than 1% of its health, both Jin and myself end up dying and I have to redo the fight entirely. Thankfully, losing a fight just means you return to the last major landmark you discovered or skip travel to, which just so happens to be right next to the Alado fight. I do the fight again with almost the exact same strategy, and it goes more or less the same, though Malos does die a little bit sooner. At this point, I was extremely nervous because it felt like the fight was actually going a tad bit worse with Malos dying earlier, but Jin and Rex have more remaining health than they did in the first attempt, and I have Rex not dancing around like a bloody psychopath. Unfortunately, the Alado uses Fin of Fear, which does 70% of Rex's remaining health, which is obviously not good. Jin still has aggro though, so Rex should be mostly fine, but Jin himself needs to get extremely lucky to not immediately die. Thankfully, RNGesus was feeling pitiful, and both Jin and Rex managed to avoid a Cursed Cuisine and a Fin of Fear, which is the only reason I managed to successfully beat him this attempt. Safe to say, getting that reflex response skill was a lifesaver. With the Alado beaten, Jin has Rex open up a couple magic doors, which is presumably why they needed Leftharians for this job. We enter the room and meet a sleeping Smash candidate number 1. What kind of Smash is up to your interpretation, but I think we all know. Anyway, Jin says that this girl is the Aegis, whatever that means, and Rex feels compelled to touch her sword. Melas yells at him, and causing him to panic and touch it, and Jin proceeds to flash step over and just flat out murder Rex, saying it's an act of mercy. Truth be told, on my first playthrough of the game, when I saw this scene, I think I audibly laughed because I didn't expect this to happen for another 5 chapters at least. Jin then destroys the sword, mostly for dramatic flair, I think, because it doesn't actually do anything in the long run, but maybe Jin just expected it to do something. Though if it did anything, I'm pretty sure it would have killed the girl, but anyway, I'm just nitpicking. Nia is angry at Jin because she started to respect Rex, but she ain't about to get an explanation anytime soon. Melos and Jin start to ship out the body of the girl, and we fade to black, much like Rex's consciousness. We quickly rejoined Rex in a grassy field with the girl we just saw standing next to a tree on top of a hill. We gained control of Rex, and I don't think many people know just how much area is explorable around here. Not enough to have anything particularly interesting happen, but enough to waste a couple minutes of your life and really appreciate the ambiance and lack of music. We head up to the girl by the tree, who talks a bit about the sound of a depressed bell that hasn't stopped ringing for years. We learn that Rex has apparently made it to Elysium, and he finally gets to see Best Girl face to face. It turns out her name is Pyra, and she is a blade. She's also a psychic, I guess, because she already knew who Rex was, which understandably confuses him. He has a bit of an amnesia moment before Pyra tells him that, lol, you died, which sends Rex into a temporary state of panic because being the somewhat selfless individual he is, his first real concern is that everyone else in the guild is in danger, but he can't really do anything because LMAO, he dead. Yes, I wrote that in the script, and no, I'm not sorry. Maybe I'm a little sorry. Pyra tells him that she'll bring him back to life by sharing her own life force in exchange for his assistance in reaching the real Elysium, because this is a dream world, obviously. He accepts and gets to touch her chest in what can only be described as a "it should have been me" moment. And then we cut back to the ship where Rex's lifeless body is slowly coming back to life. The next couple of cutscenes are admittedly some of my favorite in the entire game, so I'll just let them play out normally, and no, it's definitely not because I'm getting a little bit lazy writing the script. Nope, not at all.
Nia, end them.
End? Like what?
The price for their lives has already been paid in full. Now that we have finally obtained the Aegis, the fewer living souls know about it, the better.
I can't do that. These people haven't done anything wrong.
I don't understand you. Now. Have you forgotten why you came here to begin with? Nia.
No, but...
Oh, for the love of... Fine, I'll handle it myself. What the...
Rex?
You and that sword can't be!
It's kinda low to stab a man in the back. You bloody psychopath! Pyra!
Here!
Cover me!
Got it.
Jin, leave him to me. Sorry, kid. I can't let the likes of you just claim her power for yourself. This is as far as it goes.
Yeah! Aegis, over here!
Just leave it out!
Give it a rest, Malos! Can't you see he's just a child?
A child? Don't make me laugh. This kid has made himself the Aegis' driver!
The Aegis' driver? Rex is
You're done! Thanks, Pyra.
You're welcome. Now, don't let up!
Yeah! Ha! Ha! Ah! Everybody, go now! Quick! Yeah! Mallow, here!
I don't think so.
Hey, you bully, over here!
Burning sword!
You rat. How can a nobody like you? Ah, but with those eyes, I guess I should have been more wary from the start.
What do you mean?
Like I tell you.
At long last, it's time for the final boss of Chapter 1. And simultaneously, we have to learn how to fight alongside a blade. The in-game tutorial is not very good, but I'll briefly cover the important parts. The line connecting driver and blade shows the level of affinity between the two. The brighter the line is, the better, as it influences stuff like art's recharge speed, crit rate, and damage for special attacks. A special is an attack performed by the blade rather than the driver that can be charged up by using driver arts. They have quick time events that need to be pressed in order to do maximum damage, but they technically aren't required to finish the special. But do it anyway, it's a good idea and it's not very hard. Rather than immediately blow my load all over Malos, I decide to let my special charge up all the way to level 4 while doing as much damage as possible. You'll notice during this fight that Malos is missing 95% of his attacks, and that's once again thanks to us having Reflex Response unlocked as well as being level 7. It's probably possible to beat this fight at level 6, but I tried a few weeks ago and I just did not manage it. That said, I do not recall if I had Reflex Response unlocked, so be level 7. Every level counts this early in the game. Something to note about level 4 specials is that they can only be performed if the affinity link between you and your blade is at max, which generally isn't very hard to achieve. It just might take a bit of time to get to since Bringer of Chaos actually reduces the speed at which you can charge specials. Once you hit your level 3 special, what you need to do to reach level 4 is simply just not use any arts for a bit. Auto-attacking is fine, but no arts if you want to get it as soon as possible. Being inflicted by knockback or blowdown will also slow this process down, so it's not going to be too often that it becomes a problem. We hit level 4, and...
Let's go! Rex, I'm with you!
Using a special of any level sets up a level 1 blade combo, which in this case sets up a heat combo, doing damage over time. We can continue this combo by using a level 2 or higher fire element blade combo, which Pyra obviously happens to be. However, remember that Bringer of Chaos slows down the recharge rate of specials, so doing this alone is generally going to be next to impossible. Thankfully, this is a tutorial battle, so the game graces us with a level 2 special right away, which I use immediately to do a good burst of damage and continue the damage over time. The reason I charged up a level 4 special before is because it just naturally does a lot more damage and sets up a stronger damage over time. Thankfully, it's not wasted damage over time, as when you continue the combo, it auto-magically releases the damage over time you would have done as one big attack before continuing the combo, which still does damage over time, albeit a little bit less because level 2 specials do less damage than level 4 specials. Still helpful at this point in the game though. It's very complicated if you couldn't tell. At this point in the fight, Malos has lost just over half his health, while Wretch still has over 80% of his own. These seem like great odds until you realize Malos still probably has at least 20 times our health and raw value. This fight is anything but over. The rest of this fight is mostly just praying that Malos misses most of his attacks, especially his attacks that inflict break and topple, as those could be devastating attacks if he manages to hit them enough times. He can also use his own specials through his Blade Sever, and they can do a fair bit of damage if they manage to connect, which one does. I also get toppled a couple times, but thankfully Malos is only using 1% of his power, so his attacks mostly just tickle, even while I lie there helpless. I start getting a little bit nervous because we're both just kinda slowly chipping each other down, but we just barely manage to outdamage him, and we win the fight with a little over 100 HP left. Definitely could not have won this fight without any other build, probably. And once again, we would have one of my favorite cutscenes, which I'll just let you guys watch.
You're good, kid. It's no simple feat to control the Aegis like that. However... Don't get cocky, you little shit!
Understood.
What? Get out of the way, Nia! Have you gone mad?
You're the one who's off your net, wheeling on a child.
Nia, I don't think you quite comprehend your position.
I get it, but...
You're starting to piss me off! You're pretty sharp for someone who's only just woken up.
Pyra!
Takes me back to 500 years ago. What's the deal with that appearance? I'm guessing your goal is Elysium.
That is our dream!
Then I have no choice but to stop you!
Pyra, watch out! Pyra! You're right.
More or less. Stop this!
Nia!
You're a tough one, kid. But there's only one way this can end.
Oh, shit.
What's that?
Gramps!
Jin, still you persist. And is that Malos?
Azurda.
Hold on tight.
Stop them! Open fire! Turn her around! Ready the cannon!
It's no use. They're out of range.
Damn it! They gave us the slip.
Turn around.
We're not chasing them?
The Aegis is awakened. That's enough for now. I'll have Akos hunt them down.
That'll have to do.
So that was chapter 1. Not too many interesting fights for the majority of it, but it's the first chapter, so it kind of makes sense to ease in and then have 2 back-to-back fights that actually require some semblance of strategy. That said, it'll only get more complex and strategic from here on out, so once again, I'd like to ask you guys to consider subscribing to see me eventually nerd out on how this game works. I'll also ask for maybe a little bit of feedback in the comments below. This is my first time doing this type of video, and I'm admittedly not sure how well I did, and also just talking is hard apparently. I'm stuttering a lot. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to edit out. Also mention any quests you'd like me to cover, though I promise I'll probably get around to most of the interesting ones eventually. That's it for now. I'll see you guys next time for Chapter 2, where we sell our souls to Gacha, probably. Post-editing video maker here to say that next episode is going to be done slightly differently, with a bit of live commentary mixed in with the post-commentary for the story bits. I just think that's going to be a bit better done, and I'll see you guys then.